Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I'm a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office, not just the business owner. And I started this specifically while I'm not an owner of any dental practice because I really want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. Now, on this episode of the podcast, this is the first in-person interview I'm doing for the podcast. I'm super excited about it. I'm here with none other than my brother-in-law, Mitch Rush. Mitch, hello.
Hey there, thanks for having me. This is awesome, seeing where you're at with the podcast now, because I've watched the whole process start to finish, and I gotta say you got that intro down.
Thank you. Yeah, I could say that in my sleep. I could say it backwards at this point. But this is, like they said, the first time that I'm doing this in person. It's a little interesting because I'm looking at my computer because that's usually I'm checking my mic levels and stuff. So we are having this interview at a super interesting time for Mitch because he just gave his 30 days notice so that he is looking to leave his first associateship out of school and getting into practice ownership. So we're catching all of that emotion today to just have a discussion about what that experience has been like, what has brought you to this point. But I don't want to steal your thunder and steal your story. So tell the folks at home a little bit about what brought you here.
Yeah, I mean, well, what's super cool about having this conversation is that you were actually the first person that really put dentistry into my head when I was probably 16 years old about there. And you were at the stage where you were first getting excited about dentistry. And I remember you were telling me about why you thought it would be such a cool profession. And you were pretty much committed to it at that point. But that planted a little seed for me. And then I ended up having some friends kind of between age 18 and 20 who their parents were dentists, and they just said that like it was such a good lifestyle as a kid having a parent who was a dentist, and it just kind of reaffirmed that for me. And then I just slowly continued to have positive experiences with that and like exploring that, and ended up going that route. So kind of crazy that you put me on that path.
Yeah, super cool. So we had that discussion a long time ago. That was before I was I probably even like done with undergrad yet.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even into dental school at that point, but it was something that I had wanted to do for a long time. And then planted that seed, and then that seed over time kind of grew. And what led you to decide to get into it? And then at what point in there did you, because I guess where we are now is it's all culminating in this huge, not just career decision, but like a business decision to go into business. Where did that start?
Yeah, so there were two careers that were interesting to me, and one was to be a fine artist, like a painter, and the other was dentistry. And I struggled between those two. Ultimately, I decided that stability was super important for me, and I just didn't feel like I was going to get that with painting. And so that's something that I've continued to do on the side as part of my hobby and passion, but I've built it into dentistry where I'm working with my hands every day, and I have an eye for smile design. And so there's ways for me to use my artistic skills in dentistry. So that's kind of how I ended up coming to the point where I knew that's what I was going to do, and kind of went all in on that. And business, you were asking about that. It's always been essential to why I chose dentistry. So I always knew I wanted to be an owner in some capacity. And I think the reason why is because of the freedom that it gives you. I was just talking to my wife today. She was a middle school teacher while I was in dental school for those years. And when you're an amazing teacher, if you get better and better at your job, nothing happens as far as like how you're compensated. There's no like tangible evidence of that improvement except that kids are having a good experience, right? For us, if we improve our clinical skills, our communication skills, our leadership skills, our business skills, our income is directly proportional to that. And so there's just no cap to that, where it's motivating for me to know that like I'm in control of my destiny. So ownership was important in that aspect.
Okay, awesome. And so this being the Leading in Dentistry podcast, we'll talk a little bit about leadership and how that's infused in your journey as well, because jumping into this ownership position is going to demand that of you. And it's going to put you in a spot where you have to let that part really develop and come out. And so and another thing that's interesting is we'll continue to go down your story of, dental school and where you are now, but you've only been out of school for a little over a year, like year and a half at this point,
like 15
right?
months, yeah.
And so with that, I'm curious what things you've done in that time frame, because a lot of people, I know you and I have both listened a lot to like shared practices and heard a lot of the stories of people coming straight out of school and the things that they did to buy practices, and I think that was motivating a lot for both of us. And with that mindset, you really have to go in intentionally in order to be ready to jump into that. And I'm curious what stuff you've done over the past little while in order to make that happen, and kind of how that brought you to this decision of feeling prepared. And sometimes, I saw something the other day that said that ready is a decision, not a circumstance, right? So like whether or not you're ready is like, I'm ready. It's you decided to be ready. But there are other things that do prepare you and make you feel like you're ready for it. And there's also a certain element of not being ready and just jumping in. So that's like takes that courage in order to do something like that. So let's talk a little bit about that, and you going from dental school saying, this is my plan. How did your plan change? And then where you are now?
Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to be an owner, right? So I got into dental school, and there was a fantastic business club that I joined day one. And fortunately for me, part of that business club is they had a partnership with the Lifestyle Practice, TLP, which is a group of coaches, dental coaches who are very high level. And so I did their course and listened to their podcast, and I was doing this business club. And so I had that all 4 years just to build like a foundation. And it was awesome, because while I was sitting in pharmacology class, or while I was sitting in anatomy or whatever, like you get so burned out by that type of stuff, but like the business stuff and the clinical stuff was so exciting to me. And so that gave me like this fuel, and this like it renewed my passion when dental school was crushing that passion, right? So that kind of is how I was preparing during school, is just consuming those podcasts, reading those books about leadership, and trying to develop those skills, and also trying to get a good clinical foundation. Fortunately, I went to a school that had a good clinical program. I went to the University of Kentucky and really enjoyed it out there. And then from there, my next goal was to find a really great associateship. I thought about buying a practice straight out of school, and I'm glad I didn't. I am glad that I had some sort of associateship as a transition, because there's just like something about mentorship and having somebody who's done it before you guide you through the process that it would take you a million years to learn on your own, and just so many pitfalls that you can avoid. So I decided I wanted to be an associate, and my criteria was that like I wanted a mentor who was going to be able to stand over my shoulder and guide me through hard things. And basically treat that as like free CE, right? And luckily I got that, and was able to, like when I had a patient who needed an implant, I'd put it on the doctor's schedule, and then I would block myself off. So I wasn't producing, but I knew I was getting experience that was gonna pay for itself, right? And would learn in that type of a setting. And I'm a hands-on learner, so that was great. So I also knew that I didn't want to be an associate for too long. I wanted to not get complacent, and I wanted to push myself. And so like everybody says be an associate for 2 years, right? But I decided I wanted to do it for a year, because you're never going to be ready to be an owner. There's just way too much to learn, and most of it's on the job learning. And so I just decided to kind of rush into it, and move forward. And so from day one graduating, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was hoping that my associateship would have some partnership potential, but I wanted to be prepared for the chance that it didn't. And so I looked at the listings for dental practices every single week since graduating, and just developed relationships with brokers, looked at the financials, got the prospectus for practices, went and visited practices, and developed the knowledge that I needed to like identify a practice that was actually what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super interesting that you and I both are currently associates. So we're sitting here having a conversation about ownership and what ownership takes without really knowing what's on the other side. And so for anyone out there who is an owner and is listening, like, these guys do not know what they're talking about, it's true. We're about to jump in and find out what that looks like. And so I think it's funny for us to, like, we don't know what we don't know. There are a lot of things I think we've learned, over the course of time being associates, but also having that mindset of, I remember going back to shared practices, they talked a lot about pre-owner angst and that feeling of just like being on the precipice of getting ready to dive in, but also having all of that pent up energy. Like for me, it was 4 years in the Army, right? Mm-hmm. Where I feel the same way that you do about the business and wanting to be in the ownership position, wanting to be able to call the shots and see what I'm really made of. And until I do that, then I don't really have that opportunity. But in the Army, just wondering, because I couldn't, I wanted to so much more, right? Yeah. And same thing for you starting year one of dental school, day one of dental school, getting into that business group and getting all that coaching and training over the course of that time. It has that effect of just like making you want it more. It's like, let me at them. Let's see what we can do. So with the experience that you had in dental school, you had some good mentors. I know we've talked about that before. And then in your associateship, learning those things that you wanted to get out of that associateship. What are some of the things, along that journey that you've learned about the leadership side of things? What will it take from you or take for you in order to step into that role? What things do you feel comfortable with? What things do you have questions about? Mm-hmm. Where's your head at with that side of things? Like being the main driver of other people's, lifestyle, their income mm-hmm. as well, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind when you're talking about that is that I think that your first year, no matter where you are, it's going to be awesome. You could be in the worst job possible, and it's going to be for your benefit.
You saying as an owner or as an associate?
As an associate. Your first year out of school, if you get the worst associateship ever, you're going to learn so much.
So it's not going to be awesome like you're going to love it. Yes. It's going to be awesome for you.
Yeah, it's going to be for your,
I want to make sure I understand.
I have a lot of friends who are who were in classes below me, mm-hmm. who are reaching out to me about associateships and things like that, and like what to look for, and like I'm like, no matter what, it's going to be okay, because you will learn from the good and the bad, and in your first year, like, you're going to just be soaking up experience, right? So I guess I've learned a lot from the good, and I've learned a lot from the bad of what doesn't work in a dental office, what makes employees not feel valued, what makes patients not feel seen. But let's see.
And when you talk about this, I know that because you've only had one associateship, I don't mm-hmm. want to be pointing fingers about anything that happened in that associateship. Mm-hmm. You've had other experiences working as well that I think that we can be vague enough that you can say somewhere along your journey you encountered this story, whether it's in school, with your associateship, with an externship, anything like that. All of those experiences can play into this as well.
Yeah.
So what have you seen? Like, are there specific experiences you can call back to where you have seen something that really made a difference for a staff member, where it was very positive? Or is there something that was kind of a red flag or a warning sign for you to say, maybe I'm going to try a different approach, even if it wasn't bad? Just what do you think you might do differently, that kind of thing?
So one thing that makes a huge difference for employees is when you can talk positively about them to the patient. So if you're handing off something to the hygienist or to the assistant, I've just had employees come up to me and say, hey, that meant so much that you said that to the patient, that like, hey, you're in great hands here. This assistant is our expert on Invisalign. She's going to take great care of you, or whatever it is. Or just as you're leaving the room after a hygiene exam, hyping up the hygienist, like coming from the doctor, that means a lot to a patient, and it just makes their job so much easier. And so I've just gotten feedback that's such a team building thing, right? Where it's a small thing, but then getting it back from them too. Like I have awesome staff that I work with right now where like, as I walk out of the room, I just hear them complimenting me, and it makes me feel great. It makes me feel like a part of the team. So building that positive energy, it's contagious and it gets going. And like,
can I cut in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
I was listening to just today an episode of the Dental Practice Heroes podcast with Paul Etchison, and he talked exactly about that, where you fill up people's buckets. And he said he set a goal to give 2 compliments a week to every single person on staff. And he said it's a lot harder than you'd think, because you think you talk to everybody, but some people will make themselves known when they do something that's worth praising, and some people won't, and you kind of have to go out of your way to do that. But I think that when you do that, they want to work with you. And that's actually the word that you used. You said the staff that you work with, not staff that works for you. And I think that's a totally different mentality of being a doctor who wants people to work for you, like you work for me, or we work together.
Yeah.
And if you have that mentality of working together, the reason that they feel comfortable giving you that praise is likely because you've given it to them first. Like you've filled up their cup, and when it overflows, it comes back to you. Every summer, the dental corner of the internet lights up with the same question. What's the most important skill a new grad should focus on? Is it implants, molar endo, surgical extractions? And year after year, the answer from experienced dentists is the same: leadership and communication. These are the skills that elevate every part of your career, no matter what your role is in the dental office. That's why we're offering special pricing on the Leading in Dentistry Leadership Development Program, exclusively for new graduates and newcomers to the dental field. Whether you choose our 90-day guided course with bi-weekly coaching or the on-demand version to go at your own pace, you'll get access at a significantly reduced price. 50% off from graduates from this year, 40% off for graduates 1 year out, and 30% off for graduates 2 years out. And this offer is not just for dentists, it's open to hygienists and any new dental team member who has started within the last 3 years. If you're ready to take your leadership skills to the next level, head over to leadingindentistry.com/newgrad to learn more. That's leadingindentistry.com/newgrad. Right?
Yeah, and it comes back tenfold too, because like the hygienists that I work with, they will, after I diagnose something, they'll talk to the patient and they'll be like, Dr. Rush did this exact procedure on me and he did such a good job. You're in great hands. And they'll also, as their treatment, like going over the treatment plan and everything, just try to put work on your schedule. And that means a lot when you're an associate and you need patience and you need production to feel like you're progressing.
Yeah, and I think because you have developed in Leading in Dentistry, we talk about the teach leadership model starting with trust, and they trust you, and they, it's difficult. I know it's going to be more difficult being an owner, but when you're the boss, I know that any sort of frustration with your day at work can lead to resentment for the organization, which is led by the owner. And so as people start to resent the leaders up top, then they won't really go out of their way to do that kind of thing, And so being able to maintain that rapport with the team where they want you to succeed. And that was one of the things that I really had a difficult time starting the podcast, because I'm not starting the podcast to try to say that I know things about leadership. I've read a lot of stuff and I listen to a lot of things, but I'm still an associate and I'm just doing my best to be like the middleman boss right now. But I had listened to a lot of stuff about leadership and wanted to try to articulate things that had gone well for me when I was in the Army, because I took over a clinic. I actually never really shared this story before. Sometime I should go through a deep dive of my leadership experience in the Army, but I took over a clinic that was struggling and things went well. And I don't take the credit for that, but it made me recognize that in the leadership positions that I've been in the past, things have just worked out for me. And I know that there's got to be something that I'm doing in order to make that happen. I just don't fall into these experiences that keep just being positive. But I couldn't quantify what it was that was making the difference. And I think when I really thought about it, the thing that started leading me in the right direction was realizing that attitude shift of wanting to work with people and not wanting to have people work for me, right? Yeah. And so as you have that mindset and develop that attitude of working with your team, they want to work with you. No one wants to work for anybody else. They want to work with other people. And if you can have that type of relationship where that's how they see you, I feel like that's great. Now, I know, again, this is one of those caveats of not being in the ownership position, that at some point that is going to change. That's dynamic is going to be a little different, and it'll have to be navigated differently. But at least having that approach to it, I think is an important place to start.
Yeah, and I went to the CE course at the Hinman conference with this doctor who's retired now, but he had like 5 staff members who were with him for 25 years. And like you don't hear about that anymore. Like retention, turnover, like it's high. I've seen it. And that's the type of team that I want to have. And if somebody leaves because they're moving on to something bigger and better, that should be exciting, right? But I want to have a team where people enjoy coming to work. They feel valued. They feel respected. They feel well compensated. That's what every employee wants. And so I'm excited to be able to do my best to create that environment where people are working with me as a team and they're invested in the business. And as an associate, I don't feel like I have nearly as much control over that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel prepared to do that? Do you feel like there's always going to be that little sense of like imposter syndrome of like, are they going to find out that this is my first time? Are they going to find out that I'm figuring this out as I go along, right? But something that I really respect about you is that you have this confidence of just knowing that it's going to work out. Where does that come from?
That's a good question, and it's true. I think that's just kind of...
Or is it like you don't really care?
No.
Is it just like, I'm just going to do it and it's going to work?
No, not at all. I'm an overthinker for sure.
Okay.
And like, I want everything to work out perfectly, and I'm willing to like plan the heck out of it to try to make it perfect. And it's actually like, it can lead to paralysis where it's like, I don't know what decision to make because I'm still planning it out until it's perfect.
Right.
So that's actually kind of a weakness that I have in leadership. And with buying a practice, that was something I had to overcome where it's like, I'm never going to find the perfect practice. I'm never going to be perfectly ready. Let's just move forward with this. But back to your original question about that confidence that things are going to work out. It's just, I've just been very fortunate to have things work out. And I was kind of just raised that way where if I wanted to go to dental school, it wasn't an impossibility. It wasn't like in the back of my head, I was saying I could never make that happen. And I think that's because I had wins early on. My parents put us in difficult situations with like, I had to move a lot as a kid. I had to make new friends. I had to develop new talents. They pushed us to do hard things. Like that was a family motto, is we do hard things. And that built up confidence over time, just getting lots of little wins. And it is a blessing to be able to feel like, everything is going to work out. But also, I've seen it work out for other people. And I've surrounded myself with people who are way more talented than me, way smarter than me, who have made it work and are resources for me. And that builds my confidence, just knowing I have a team around me. I have friends, I have family who are very generous with their knowledge, and you're definitely one of those.
Thanks. One of the things that for me helped like have that confidence that things are going to work out is having people around me that have done it before helps you know that like, if it can be done, why can't I do it? Right. And having that, go get 'em attitude, like put me in, coach, I got this kind of thing. Another thing for me was like you said, it'll work out. Steve Jobs had that quote that said, "The dots always connect, but they only connect looking backwards."
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's huge. Or if I'm in the moment and I don't really know why this is going to be positive, I know that it's just not there yet, right? And then I think the last thing was, I forget which book it was, but it was talking about how, when you go to a cemetery, on someone's gravestone, there's that little dash, like the date they were born, the date they died, and that little dash. And in 100 years from now, your great grandchildren may not even know your name. And so we way overthink what we're doing and the ramifications of it. And in the grand scheme of things, I mean, does it really matter? Like, it matters for my life, it matters for my family, but I don't want to miss that opportunity to jump onto something and have it work out. And in the grand scheme of things, even if it's a catastrophic failure, I mean, it is my opportunity to try something. And so I don't know. I feel like those kind of things have helped me develop the ability to test my stomach lining, but all in good time. So I think that was a big thing for me, moving to Colorado, joining the practice that I'm in, and getting this house that we're sitting in. I was not very much of a risk taker, and my wife, your sister, was very big on just helping me know these are the moves that we have. We know the life that we want, and we're reverse engineering what it takes to get there. And this is the next step in order to do that. So I don't know. I'm rambling at this point.
Start with the why.
Yeah.
And that's been huge to figure out what you want and then put the things in place that you need to get there.
Mm-hmm. And so, as you're preparing for this practice, tell us a little bit more about how you made the decision to switch from the associateship and say, you said you were checking listings every week. Mm-hmm. When did you decide, okay, this is what I want to do, and to make that transition, what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, I wanted to be ready to pounce on the right opportunity should it appear. So I was checking those listings. I was learning about what's important in a prospectus and what to look for. And I remember listening to a podcast on TLP where two of the guys, Derek and Steve, were talking about how they'd been through 100 financials before they bought the practice that they each bought. And I was like, that sounds ridiculous. I'll never get there. And I've probably done 75, Mm-hmm. And so you just learn slowly through that, and that built up confidence. And in dental school, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I went to a lot of courses that talked about what do you need to have to be ready to purchase a practice. And you need liquidity, between 60 to 80,000 in your bank account, just to show the bank, hey, I'm serious and I've got this money to cover emergencies should I need it in the first 6 months. And so I put everything, my wife and I everything that we've been doing for the past year and a half has been with this one goal in mind of, we know we want to be in ownership. It's going to jumpstart this career and our financial situation and get us to where we want to be, start with the why. And so we've been saving. We lived with family for a year, and that actually worked out way better than we could have ever imagined, but we were super lucky to have that so that we could be saving at a more aggressive rate. And I guess as an associate, I just got that angst a lot faster than I realized, because I had this vision in my head of what I wanted to build. And I was reading all of these books and I was taking notes, and I was already building trainings of okay, if this were my team, here's how I would train them on X, Y, or Z, and trying to build up these resources for the future. And I was just so ready to apply them. I got kind of close to buying a couple of practices, and mostly location was the issue. I'd cast a pretty wide net, and then I realized, starting with that why, I realized how important location was to me, to be close to family, and to be in a family-friendly city and close to the mountains because I'm outdoorsy. And so I just kept narrowing what I was looking for as far as how big is this practice, where is it located, and then one popped up out of the blue. I was kind of in this crunch time between a bunch of decisions at my associateship, And I just started to feel like everything was about to click, and then boom, it clicked. And I found this one, and I was ready because I had laid all this groundwork. I was ready to be the first one in with my foot in the door and to put in that offer. And that felt really good because I would have been ticked if I let this slip by, you know. It was exactly in the area that I was looking for. It was the exact number of ops. It was the producing and collecting the exact amount with like a great overhead. So I'm pumped about it.
Cool. Since I've been along for the ride a little bit and seeing some of the practices you've looked at, or at least we've talked about them, I think that you hit the nail on the head. Like, that's exactly what you've been looking for. And you're going to have this day in the next month or two?
Yeah.
month or two?
Yeah, 27 days out.
27 days out where, so we said, you gave your 30-day notice, so we're just 3 days fresh from that experience. So when you get there and you have that opportunity, I know that you probably haven't ironed out the details of what, exactly what will happen that first day. But I'm sure, being a planner, that you have an idea of like what you want to do when you hit the ground running. You talked a little bit about trainings that you've developed. What is your plan with the team? Part of the leading in dentistry is making sure that everyone knows that they can be a leader, and you're going to have to step in as the new leader and the new face, which they may not even know that it's coming yet, and then start having those discussions and laying the groundwork. What's your plan there?
Yeah. So plan is to retain as much staff as possible. So there's 5 or 6 employees, and I want to keep them all to see how they fit in the team for at least a little while. And so day one, I want to introduce myself and get to know them and let them know that as little as possible will be changing for the first little while, so that I can be an observer and learn their systems and not come in and slash and burn. I want them to feel like it's a stable environment. Nobody's job is at risk. I'm not going to be firing people and bringing in my own team. So just create this little foundation of trust and start to kind of, it's going to be a little slow in the beginning, I'm sure. And so I'll use that downtime to try to meet people one-on-one. And I have kind of this like form of getting to know people so that I can kind of store that away for, when somebody's sick, I can send them their favorite meal, or I can stock the office with their favorite snacks or whatever. Or if I buy the office t-shirts, I know what their sizes are or whatever. So like I'll just have this so that I can kind of impress slowly with little acts of kindness. And
those are things you can do right off the bat, because it's not like you're changing like the way that we do things, that it's not going to come across like that. I remember, you've seen Ted Lasso, right? Like, I think it's the first or second episode where he just comes in and has the suggestion box and says like, what do you guys want to change? And someone complained about the water pressure in the shower, and the episode ends after all this drama with them being hard on him as the new boss, with them going into the shower and like the water pressure is good. And it's like that little thing got some buy-in from the team.
Listening to the team and actually coming through. Yeah. And then week 1, I'll do a training on our values, our core values as a team, and kind of developing those together. I have my own set of what I think is important, but I need to get feedback from them and incorporate it into it, because ultimately that's how we're going to be hiring new staff and firing people. So if people are not able to live up to what we've decided our standards are, they're going to have to go.
What does the team look like right now? Do you have a good picture of that? You said there's 5 or 6 people?
There's still a couple of details to hammer out, but it's looking like 2.5 hygienists, 2 assistants, and 1 front desk who's also the office manager.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. The reason I was asking that is if there's a different plan for the different team members or different positions, because you have a couple of trainings that you have in your back pocket, and I'm curious what because you've given this some thought, I'm sure, about how long to go through that, being a sponge phase where you're the one soaking up everything. Yeah. And at a certain point you transition into, okay, I think I've seen enough with this, and it's time for me to address X, Y, or Z. So I guess it will depend on the situation, but what is your plan for those different positions? Then at some point, do you just intend on saying, knowing what I know now about you, I would rehire you? Or is it kind of an unofficial, we'll feel this out over time kind of thing?
I think I'm going to go into it with the mindset that everybody's going to stay on board, knowing that that's not actually going to happen, because that's very rare. I think it's important to not be offended if you have a little bit of turnover in the first year, because they were bought into the previous vision. But I originally planned on going in and giving it 4 to 6 months of kind of trying to change as little as possible and observing. And I was talking to my coach, Derek Williams, and he said to not put a hard timeline on it, because if you give that to the staff, they'll hold you to it. And so it may be 1 month. It depends on how eager the team is. If they're coming to me with a bunch of suggestions of like, hey, this was an associate run practice and like we were not optimized, here's a bunch of stuff we can change. Of course I'm going to jump on
run with it. Right. Yeah, that's cool. Well, as you're counting down the days, the 27 days until this happens, is there anything that you're doing as like last minute preparations or anything that you want to try to dial in during that time? What are you spending the next 4 weeks doing?
Yeah, to be honest, though, with the previous practices that I had come pretty close to buying, I've never gotten this far. And so there's actually a lot on the back end that I didn't realize, just like working with the lawyer on certain documents. I've been getting my CPA in place. I've been setting up my business entity, getting my tax strategy like worked out. Like there's actually a lot. There's just documents, there's emails. Like I'm having to have phone calls during lunch and on my way home from work every day. So it's eating up a lot of that time. But what I am doing is I'm reading Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, and that's a great leadership book.
Huge.
And I'm just trying to figure out, as a future leader, what are my weaknesses? And like I found a few that are helpful to know. There's this term in that book, accidental diminishers. Most leaders are accidental diminishers, and they just don't realize what it is about their style that's like accidentally bringing the whole team down. And so I'm trying to dial that in and figure out how can I start on my best foot.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for capturing this moment with me, because I know I've wanted to do this for a while, to just kind of see where you are, how is it feeling, what kind of thoughts are running through your mind. And I want to do a follow-up episode, because I know it's great that your coach is Derek Williams, because going back to show practices for the 3rd time in this episode, he was such a huge inspiration to a lot of people. And I think it started with when Richard Lowe, friend of the podcast, interviewed him when he was, I think it was his first week of ownership. Yeah. And then they did another interview, I don't know if it was 6 months or a year later, and kind of follow his story. So if you would be so kind as to do this with me, and then in 6 months and a year, kind of do a check-in and just see what changes you've experienced and what kind of things. Well, you can go back and listen to this and just figure out, like, man, I didn't know what I didn't know, or maybe some things turned out exactly how you had lined them up, and I'm curious to see where that goes. So are there any final words of things that you'd like to say for anyone who is maybe 1 or 2 steps behind you on the journey that you could give some parting wisdom to?
I think just what you were just saying there about capturing this energy, it's important, because if you think about where you are right now, whether you're in dental school or you're applying to dental school or you are in your associateship or you're just in the ownership, no matter where you are living your dream from like 5 years past, right? And it's so hard to remember that in the crappy moments. And I know, like, 2 months into ownership, I'm probably going to be hating my life. Like, it's going to be so difficult, like more difficult than I can possibly imagine right now. But I'm going to be living the pinnacle of my dream. What I've been hoping for like, I don't know, how many years has it been? Like 8 years. And it's, even though it's hard, you're living your dream, and that's part of the journey. And just enjoy the journey and the process, and you'll look back on it fondly eventually.
I hope we do. All right. Well, thanks, Mitch. And for everyone who's listening, as we end every episode, we say always be leading and always be learning. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Mitch.
And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.